What's up, Taiwan? I'm Reece Ayers with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. A Taiwanese delegation is heading to China to try to push for the reopening of tourism links. The delegation is from Taiwan's outlying islands of Kinmen, which are just a few kilometers off the Chinese coast. Louise Watt is following the story for us from Taipei. Louise, why is Kinmen sending this delegation now?
Kinmen is close to the Chinese coast and it's particularly dependent on China for trade. And after more than 3 years of no Chinese tourists, they want them back. Now, a delegation headed by officials from Kinmen's local government with a whole load of representatives from tourism in tow, they're heading to Beijing. And tomorrow, they're expected to arrive this afternoon, but tomorrow, that's when the meeting takes place. They're expected to meet with the head of the Chinese government agency that's in charge with relations with Taiwan. Now, China stopped its citizens making visits as part of tour groups to Taiwan in 2020. Those restrictions are still largely in place, and the delegation says it wants to press Beijing to allow Chinese tourists to come back to Kinmen as soon as possible. And Kinmen's legislator, Chen Yujian, she's also part of this delegation. She says that she hopes that Chinese tour groups will be allowed back to Kinmen before China's big holiday, the National Day holiday in October. That's when millions of Chinese travel. Now, Chen, she is the legislator of she belongs to the main opposition party, the KMT, and she says that she wants to revive ties between the two sides after a series of incidents in the waters around Kinmen that have brought ties between Taiwan and China worse than they already were. In one example, 2 Chinese nationals were killed in a chase with the Taiwanese Coast Guard. Taiwan recently handed back their bodies to China, and China then released some fishers that it had been holding in detention. So Chen says she wants to build on this positive momentum in relations, in her words, to get tourists back to Kinmen.
And so, Louise, why is Kinmen pushing for Chinese tourists to return rather than Taiwan as a whole?
Well, China and Taiwan have had restrictions on tourists visiting. That's because of the pandemic, and it's also because of the general poor state of their relations. Well, Taiwan last year, it did lift some of its restrictions on Chinese tourists visiting. It's already called on China multiple times to allow its tourists to visit Taiwan. But so far, China has only allowed some tourists to visit another group of outlying islands, Matsu, and they saw the first Chinese tour groups in several years visit in June. So Kinmen, like Matsu, it's geographically close to China, and it has lots of family links. But being that close, historically, it was on the front lines of conflict. Back in the 1950s, it saw intense bombardment from Mao Zedong's Chinese forces. And today, people in Kinmen see themselves as close to China, not just geographically, but also as a bit of a political and cultural go-between. They depend on China for trade. Tourism is a big part of that. So they'll be hoping that this delegation's trip to Beijing helps bring back some of the tourists that have been missing for the past few years.
Thanks for that update, Louise. That was Louise Watt live for us in Taipei. Taiwan wants peace. It will not yield to China, and nor will it provoke it. That's the message from President Lai Ching-te in a speech at a major security forum being held in Taipei. Chris Gorin has the details.
Former government officials and academics from around the world have gathered in Taipei today for the Ketagalan Forum. It's an event hosted by Taiwan's foreign ministry and a local think tank, and is focused on security issues in the Indo-Pacific, specifically China. Taiwan President Lai Ching-te opened the event, giving a rare speech in English and promising to try to keep the peace between Taipei and Beijing.
As a responsible member of the international community, Taiwan will neither yield nor provoke and maintain the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. On the condition of parity and dignity, we are willing to conduct exchanges and cooperate with China to achieve peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait.
Other key speakers set to speak include former Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihiko Noda, former Slovakian Prime Minister Edward Heger, and former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and Republican presidential contender Nikki Haley. Expert panels will also discuss gray zone warfare, economic de-risking, and challenges to digital democracy. Although not explicitly stated in the agenda, at the center of all these security concerns is China. Beijing has been at the center of many of speakers' comments today. This is an event that Taipei hopes sends a message that Taiwan's fate is a matter of international concern and that it has friends abroad. John Su and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
A leading politician in the opposition at Taiwan People's Party has been suspended from the party for 3 years. TPP legislator Vivian Huang's suspension comes amid an ongoing finance scandal in the party over its accounts in this year's presidential election. Huang was in charge of the campaign. An accountant and another staff member have been kicked out of the party. Huang will be able to stay on as a legislator. She has apologized and says she accepts responsibility for the scandal.
总干事责无旁贷，我绝对也不是一个恋战的人。重点是要把善后的工作做好，理清相关的责任，给社会个交代，是我最重要的任务。
Infections of the bacterial disease Melioidosis are continuing to rise in the aftermath of Typhoon Gaemi. 17 new cases were reported last week, and 4 people died from the illness. A total of 47 people have been infected and 7 have died since Gaemi hit the country last month. Melioidosis is transmitted by contact with infected water and soil and often spreads after floods. Representatives from Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party and Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party are meeting in Tokyo. It's the 5th such meeting between the two countries' governing parties and a chance for Taiwan and Japan to strengthen their relations in the absence of formal ties. This time, the two sides are expected to discuss issues such as security in the Asia-Pacific region. To find out more about this meeting in Tokyo, John Van Trieste spoke with analyst Rintaro Nishimura.
What specific issues do you foresee being discussed at this meeting?
Well, this meeting, I think, has 2 purposes. One being that since the new Lai administration has come in, this is the first big meeting between the two ruling parties. And so this is kind of like a meet and greet of sorts to kind of set the stage for continued engagement with the new government. I don't think there will be any firm commitments, but there will be discussions about how Japan can support Taiwan in a certain military conflict that may happen. I think the Japanese side will specifically talk about the shelters and the fact that there's a lot of concern about how Japanese nationals and companies would be protected in a certain situation where there would be armed conflict.
Now, this is the 5th time this sort of meeting has been held. How has Japan over the past 5 or so years managed to continue these meetings while at the same time avoiding upsetting China?
Japan has continued to play this sort of balancing game. While Japan has increased its engagements with Taiwan, say with the 2+2 and also these cross-party diet member meetings, delegations going to Taiwan, they've also continued to engage the Chinese side. In last month, actually, there was a flurry of visits from, all the way from the government level to diet members, and also the National Diet sending a delegation to meet the National People's Congress. So there's been, it's not been a complete shift away from China to Taiwan.
Japan's in a period of political transition with Prime Minister Kishida announcing he won't seek re-election. How is the upcoming election in Japan likely to play into this?
I think at the moment, at least because the 2+2 talks are happening before the election or before Kishida steps down, there's not going to be any sort of big change in how talks would go. I mean, obviously there's the, I guess from the Taiwanese perspective, there could be concern that, a new prime minister may change directions. And so maybe these talks will not be as valuable compared to if Kishida were to stay on. But I think for the most part, all of these candidates who are potentially going to make a run, they may have very different viewpoints on how to approach foreign policy and relations with Taiwan. But the core of the kind of party's approach to Taiwan and to China, I don't think those things will change regardless of who becomes prime minister.
That was analyst Rintaro Nishimura speaking on talks between the ruling parties of Taiwan and Japan. India's foreign minister says his country has agreed to strengthen defense ties with Japan.
A free, open and rules-based Indo-Pacific is the top priority for both our countries. We explored the possibility of coordinating our respective security and development assistance where our interests converge.
Subramanyam Jaishankar was speaking after he and India's defence minister met with their Japanese counterparts for 2+2 talks in New Delhi. The two sides reaffirmed their commitment to maintaining a rules-based international order in light of increased Chinese military activity in the region. Both sides also welcomed more Navy cooperation. US Democratic Party delegates have unanimously voted for Kamala Harris as their pick for president in the upcoming US election in a ceremonial roll call at the Democratic National Convention.
I am thrilled to reaffirm Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee for President of the United States.
Vice President Harris addressed the DNC after the roll call from a campaign rally in Milwaukee. She said her campaign is a path forward for the future of freedom and faith. Day 2 of the convention hosted a raft of high-profile guests, including a performance from rapper Lil Jon, Republicans who have shifted their support away from Trump, and former US First Lady Michelle Obama and President Barack Obama.
We have a chance to elect someone who has spent her entire life trying to give people the same chances America gave her. Someone who sees you and hears you and will get up every single day and fight for you. The next president of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
Taiwan is already a global leader in technology, and it's looking to build on that expertise by building more partnerships with foreign tech firms. As Rick Glauert reports, that includes hosting one of the largest robotics and automation trade fairs in Asia.
Robotics and automation is an industry worth tens of billions of US dollars worldwide. And here at Intelligent Asia, Taiwan is pushing itself to become a hub for these new technologies. This is a massive exhibition with thousands of exhibitors showing everything from industrial automation, smart manufacturing, 3D printing, the works. There's also a packed schedule of forums and talks on issues affecting the industry, such as the role of AI in supply chains. This is the world's first AI-powered barbecuing machine. It lets you roast your meats without getting your hands dirty. I'm joined by the company's CEO. Could you tell us, how does it work?
可以利用手机的操作，然后它是一个 AI 烤肉的一些部分，然后可以利用这样子，然后就可以远离火焰，而且可以让这个烤肉变得均匀一点。
There's a lot of buzz and excitement around this event, and there's even been rumors that NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, could make an appearance over the next couple of days. Taiwan, of course, has a strong background in cutting-edge technologies, mainly the production of sophisticated semiconductors, now hoping to carve out more of a name for itself in these emerging technologies. Joseph Wu and Rick Glauert in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we take you to Sri Lanka, where people have been celebrating the Festival of the Tooth, a Buddhist tradition. I'm Reece. Take care and see you next time.